Our story today is about a young kid, quite unfamiliar with the vastness of this world, whose profound love for rescue dogs has stolen many hearts online. This story starts with a heartwarming incident involving a little boy named Jackson that rapidly transformed into a stirring and inspirational episode. Based in Charleston, South Carolina, the Bedchard family is composed of 4-year-old Jackson, his mother, and their cozy home where they live a pretty average life, along with Jackson's father. Being a devoted Marine, he is often out on duty, leaving Jackson and his mother to manage day-to-day routines alone. Mrs. Bedchard, a committed homemaker, focuses wholly on nurturing Jackson and instilling in him the values of compassion and benevolence. Before we continue, feel free to support us by hitting like, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell to never miss our stories. Jackson showed an above-average level of energy compared to his cohort, even from a tender age. He would spend quite a lot of time in the yard playing. His mother, a passionate advocate for animal welfare, introduced him to the practice of fostering dogs. This initiative started when the family relocated from a military habitat to a suburban setting. Mrs. Bedchard seized the opportunity to combine her love for animals with providing companionship for her son. Their home forever warmly embraced foster dogs, making it a point to always have at least 3 dogs under their care. At the moment, they are lovingly fostering 4 magnificent dogs and 2 cats. Among them, Geo, renowned for his gentle and tender demeanor, became Jackson's preferred companion. The little boy would pass countless hours with his furry friends in the yard, frequently coming home covered in dirt, the undeniable hallmark of a delightful outdoor childhood. Jackson's mother watched his budding bond with the foster animals with pride. She felt that this relationship not only filled the thin void left by his father's regular deployments, but also instilled a feeling of accountability and affection in Jackson. Indeed, fostering such bonds seemed a much more valuable activity than many other hobbies a kid might pick up. Mrs. Bedchard refrained from showing any preference among the dogs they fostered. She made it a principle to treat all dogs equally, showering them all with equal affection and care. She was particularly mindful of the biases related to certain breeds, such as pit bull terriers, despite their infamous reputation and the unfavorable impression often associated with them due to their past involvement in dogfights. Mrs. Bedchard was committed to offering every dog a chance to feel love and kindness. She was well aware that, just like any other breed, pit bulls demand considerable love. This story doesn't only demonstrate the innocence and fondness of a small child, but it also emphasizes how looking after animals can offer positive influence. It is a testament of how compassion and friendliness can significantly impact both humans and 4-legged creatures. Through his interactions, Jackson managed to find not just joy and companionship, but also gave hope to animals in need. Breeds such as pit bulls are often feared for their robust bodies, trimmed coats, and muscular frames, setting them apart from gentler-looking breeds like golden retrievers or border collies. What is often overlooked is the traditional role of these so-called power breeds as nanny dogs. Owing to their nurturing dispositions and powerful protective instincts, the initial attraction of owning these breeds for their appearance or perceived strength often fades as they grow and exhibit more demanding behaviors, contributing to their high surrender rates and overrepresentation in shelter systems, where they are often the first to be relinquished and face challenges in finding new homes due to prevalent negative stereotypes in certain areas or living conditions. These breeds are even outright banned in certain areas. In contrast, youngsters tend to look beyond these societal preconceived notions and offer unbiased love where grown-ups may stumble, accepting these dogs without prejudice. As was evident in the case of young chap Jackson, he had developed an extraordinary affection for pit bulls, his breed of choice. Despite not being allowed to keep one, like several other kids, Jackson got a weekly allowance for the tasks he did, an approach his parents used with the intent of inculcating responsibility and financial know-how right from his formative years. He was inspired to put aside at least half of his allowance, thereby instilling early lessons of fiscal responsibility. It's astonishing what a little 4-year-old can accomplish. Jackson engaged in fostering and looking after animals, a task many grown-ups don't even contemplate. With her enthusiastic little one in tow, Mrs. Bedshard routinely traveled all over the state to lend a hand at different animal rescue shelters. Not only did these trips allow her to stay active within the animal rescue circles, they also presented little Jackson with opportunities to explore places he would fondly call cuteness factories, courtesy of the abundance of adorable creatures. For Jackson, these trips were more than mere outings. They were opportunities to befriend new animal pals and to learn invaluable lessons about life. Every worker at the rescue centers, well acquainted with Jackson from his early years, were constantly amazed at Jackson's natural propensity to connect with any saved creature. His involvement from a tender age emphasizes the profound impact a supportive atmosphere can exert on a child's growth and perspectives on animals. On a distinct day, Jackson, accompanied by his mother, embarked on a purposeful journey in their vehicle to the local animal rescue facilities, a visit they frequently organized to assess the well-being of the creatures. With his inherently compassionate character, Jackson was committed to making sure animals needing a forever home were showered with love and care. On that day, they opted to tour a new rescue center they had not previously been to, called the Charleston Animal Society. With high spirits, Jackson looked forward to meeting new furry friends at an unfamiliar place. His excitement was evident when he entered the facility, eager to greet every creature he laid his eyes on. His mother recommended he politely introduce himself to the workers at the center before proceeding to the animal quarters. At this segment of the center, a scene greeted Jackson that gladdened his heart. Tucked in a corner was a monochrome pit bull named Penelope by the rescue center. Yet Jackson thought Spot was a better fit because of a prominent black blotch on her forehead. Bursting with joy, Jackson jumped for joy. He felt an instantaneous connection with Spot from the other side of the fence, a spectacle that filled the workers at the rescue center with smiles as they observed the happiness enveloping Penelope, newly named Spot. Owing to this newfound attention, especially since she had been abandoned by a former owner who had incorrectly seen her gentle nature as a threat to children, the connection between Jackson and Spot was evident. Jackson turned to his mother with anticipation in his eyes, requesting her to adopt the cute pit bull. Unfortunately, his mother had to reject his request. She explained that they were potentially moving back to military accommodation, which posed a significant issue. Since pit bulls were not welcome there, she didn't want to expose Jackson to the heartache of separation from Spot if relocation occurred. Disappointed but acknowledging his mother's wisdom, Jackson said a tearful farewell to Spot. As they trudged back through the facility, there was a visible dampening of Jackson's mood due to the departure. During a shelter visit, Jackson experienced a brief moment of joy when he encountered Tank, a large gray pit bull that wagged its tail excitedly on seeing him. Despite his mom persistently denying his pleas for the exact same reasons as before, Jackson's disappointment was clear. This led to the shelter workers stepping in. Embodying empathetic encouragement, they gathered around Jackson, whose heart was heavy with sadness over not being able to take Spot or Tank home. They comforted him, asserting that his visits greatly lifted the animals' moods, and his kindness and love brought them enormous delight. Stirred by their words, Jackson committed to consistently visit and stand up for these animals until they found homes, gripping onto the dream of one day getting one for himself. When the realization dawned that they couldn't adopt Penelope or have Tank as a pet, they were crestfallen. Among those affected, there was Jackson, a kid whose single desire was to share his warmth with these needy creatures. Everyone around comprehended his mother's perspective. At this point, they proposed a benefactor endorsement program to Jackson's mom. This program could handle the adoption fees, simplifying the process for potential pet owners. Before his mom could entirely understand the proposal, Jackson, bubbling with excitement, declared that he'd use his pocket money to contribute to the dog's sponsorship. This selfless act stirred everyone present, causing the shelter workers to struggle to hold back their tears. Subsequently, Jackson's story of kindness quickly became a sensation online, garnering attention and enlightening a worldwide audience about how they could contribute to aid rescued animals like Anna. Even for those who couldn't adopt, this moving narrative underscores the extraordinary benevolence that children are capable of. As you hear this story, what thoughts come to mind? We'd love to get your feedback in the comments below. Your viewpoints matter to us. Now we're on to our next captivating story. Mr. Smith, after experiencing an extremely challenging child delivery, made the emotional decision of adopting a dog for his son, who had become immobile because of the incident. With an aim to bring some cheerfulness and sense of normalcy into their radically altered lives, this new member had an impact on their family that surpassed all their expectations during an unbearably warm afternoon in a peaceful neighborhood in Montana. Amidst an explosive mix of feelings, Terry Smith was struggling. Grappling with a mind rife with confusion, he was on a mission to find what, in his perception, was a vital answer to his worries. His son Timmy's first birthday was imminent, and he was determined to find a gift that would resonate profoundly. Even before Timmy's arrival into the world, Terry and his spouse had envisioned an opulent celebration of this momentous occasion, with a grand commemoration to boot. However, their current circumstances were dramatically at odds with what they had so lavishly planned. The previous few months had been remarkably tough for Mr. Smith, and the prospect of arranging the previously envisioned, extravagant, animal-adorned gathering had become a far-off dream. Instead, he refocused his energy on something he truly believed could change their predicament for the better: a canine companion. He had heard from many loved ones and people he knew that a pet could be utterly transformative for his young son, that it could outpace tangible medical assistance in its impacts. Valuing the wellness of his son above all, he enthusiastically accepted this idea, approaching it with the ardor of someone committed to a high-stakes mission. Upon setting foot inside the pet adoption center, he was immediately greeted with an orchestra of enthusiastic howls and whines from a host of endearing dogs, all vying for his notice. Among this chaotic cacophony, an English toy terrier captivated his attention with its inquisitive eyes, as a result of the prior research he had done on various breeds of dogs. Mr. Smith had no doubt in his mind that this small yet bold terrier would make the ideal partner for Timmy. It was just the right size to not overwhelm him during their playtimes, and yet was also renowned for its loyalty and protective nature, just the companion his son required in these challenging times. The memory of Timmy's entry into the world remained vividly etched in Terry's mind. The unnerving quietude that blanketed the delivery room as his son was born, swiftly followed by the heartening sound of his robust wails. The birthing process had been traumatic for each of them, the baby and its mother. During a time fraught with immense worry for their well-being, the medical personnel had quickly whisked Timmy away into another room, even before Terry and his spouse had the chance to cradle him in their arms. The nurse's concerned expressions and the thick atmosphere of uncertainty deeply disconcerted Terry as he paced the waiting area. His recalls with stark clarity, seeing his son lying in the medical cot while the doctor spelled out the severity of his health condition. With the advent of their newborn, the Smiths' world was drastically transformed in ways they could never have foreseen, bestowing in its trail newfound resilience and delight, despite the hurdles they faced. Timmy was born with a spinal injury owing to excessive pressure in the birth canal, inflicting considerable damage to his delicate backbone. Consequently, he was immobile from the waist down. The medical prognosis suggested that his chances of ever becoming ambulatory were slim but feasible. Clinging to this flicker of hope, Terry, Timmy's father, heeded the doctor's counsel for intensive physical therapy. He was ready to explore any alternative that could slightly improve his son's status. While Terry stayed positive, his wife was swamped by desolation. The realization that their son was immobilized shattered her, and despite doctors' reassurances that she was not to blame, she was unable to shake off the guilt. This emotional turmoil was exacerbated by postnatal depression, which cast a shadow over her once radiant personality. She found it challenging to bond with Timmy, slowly distancing herself even from his therapy sessions. To cope with the soaring medical costs, Terry often worked overtime, leaving his wife solely responsible for Timmy for prolonged durations. He acutely recognized the limited interaction Timmy experienced during these hours. In an attempt to introduce some happiness and potentially a healing component into their home, Terry proposed adopting a canine companion. Although his wife showed minimal enthusiasm, Terry clung to the idea that a pet might not only enhance Timmy's mood, but also provide her some comfort. Scrapping their initial plans for an extravagant birth anniversary celebration established before Timmy's birth, Terry thought it was a fitting time to introduce a new, furry addition to their family. After some exploration, he was enthralled by an English toy terrier. Allured by its fidelity and loving nature, characteristics he believed were perfect for his son. Professionals have pointed that participating in active play with a lively dog could fortify the muscles of a paralyzed person and boost their psychological endurance. Although Terry recognized the physical constraints, knowing the dog wouldn't immediately enable Timmy to crawl or walk, he was convinced that the dog would turn his son's dull days into exhilarating journeys, brimming with affection and fresh trials. After finalizing the adoption process, which included a reasonable amount of paperwork and a fee, Terry was filled with a blend of eagerness and hopefulness as he prepared to receive the English Terrier into their home. While traveling, filled with excitement for the new journey they were about to start, Terry took a detour to a nearby bakery. His intention was to grab a few delicacies, not just for the family, but also for their new furry companion. He was eager to experience the impact their new pet would have on their lives. With his son's special day around the corner, understanding his wife hadn't found time to bake a cake this year, Terry made a thoughtful choice to purchase an ornately decorated cake from their most liked local bakery. He also chose an endearing bow for the pooch, determined to further celebrate the occasion. Upon arriving home with the surprise cake and the fashionably adorned canine, Terry experienced a mix of apprehension and optimism. He knew the critical nature of the impending steps. They were essential for mending the tense vibes in their home. As he opened the main door and let the little terrier dash in, his wife's reaction was far from pleasant. She glared at him, challenging him. "Really, now I have to nurture a kid and a dog while you are away at work all day?" Terry felt a pinch of pain, but managed to retain his smile, avoiding wincing. He realized that his wife was probably more burdened than he was, subtly dealing with her ongoing therapy sessions for her recovery. He kindly clarified that he had made arrangements for their domestic helper to tend to the furry friend's morning requirements, which would enable him to handle the evening strolls. He wished the little terrier would serve as an effective distraction for their son Timmy, providing her some much-deserved self-time. With a sarcastic chuckle, she retaliated, "So you think I should leave our son unsupervised with a strange dog?" Terry replied calmly, "Not at all. I just hope that you manage their interspersed acquaintance sessions," she retaliated. "He isn't ready to interact. He hasn't even started crawling yet." Retaining his cool, Terry reassured her he would, thereby ending their discussion. She accepted the cake from him, albeit reluctantly, and watched as he headed towards Timmy's room. The baby laid in his crib, clutching a soft toy and babbling to himself, lacking anyone to indulge him in the whimsical, playful conversations that spark a child's imagination. Terry felt a wave of sorrow for his son, who mostly stayed in his room and had not inclined towards other kids as yet. Determined to alter the situation, Terry picked Timmy up from the crib, showered love on him, and took him to the living room. And there stood the little pup, all dolled up with a cute bow, greeting them with a spirited yelp. Timmy's gaze sparkled at his new fuzzy companion, and his hands reached out animatedly. Carefully, Terry set his son on the ground, standing just behind him. A whistle from Terry got the pup's attention straight away. The little terrier approached, tail swishing, and allowed Timmy to stroke its soft fur, filling the air with his gleeful giggles. A moment later, even Terry's spouse was swept up in the warmth of their son's happiness. The pup swiftly fit itself into their lives, becoming an essential family member and breathing joy and a sense of togetherness into their home. The relationship between Timmy and the little terrier flourished with each passing day, transforming a humble birthday surprise into a meaningful turning point for their family, mending past hurts and forming new connections founded on unconditional affection and understanding. In the Smiths' residence, it was Terry's role to ensure their new addition was well cared for and fed each morning before his departure to work. Their house help too was instrumental in making certain that the pup was never left wanting for food or hydration. Terry's spouse, who at first was indifferent towards the furry friend, gradually acknowledged the positive impact it had on their household. Their once introverted child was adapting astonishingly. The typically subdued boy was now laughing constantly, keen on rolling around on the floor with his new playmate. His delighted grins were there to welcome Terry every evening, and his speech development began to show noticeable progress. Within a few weeks, even Terry's spouse confessed to the profound transformation the little terrier had instigated. Their son Timmy had formed a special attachment to the terrier. Young Timmy, who used to struggle to sit on his own, was now enthusiastically crawling across the floor. Terry watched joyfully as Timmy confidently moved towards Duke, the name they had lovingly bestowed upon their treasured terrier. Its friendly demeanor gave Terry's spouse more moments for her own self-care and relaxation. Now she managed to take part in therapy sessions thrice a week, and her overall sense of well-being had seen a significant boost. 2 months after the pup's adoption, she suggested that it would be nice to take Timmy along with Duke for a leisurely walk. The pleasant atmosphere in the Smith household seemed to bloom further in the company of the lovable terrier. In the months that followed, Terry noted a remarkable improvement in his son. The young lad who had previously struggled to lift his arms was now able to sit up independently and eagerly shuffle across the floor to keep up with Duke. There seemed to be an instinctual understanding from the dog as he observed Timmy's limitations, gently standing by as Timmy navigated around toys and balls on the floor. Steps forward taken during Timmy's physical therapy sessions were heartening. His core strength was developing well, almost reaching the level of his contemporaries, and his lower body strength was progressing at a notable rate. Despite the fact that he hadn't begun to crawl yet, Terry held on to his hope. This sense of uplift also affected his wife, who became noticeably more engaged and lively. She would frequently join Timmy and Duke as they played, her happy sounds filling their home and welcoming Terry home from his job. Duke, with his ever-wagging tail and devoted gaze, had morphed into more than a pet. He was the springboard of newfound happiness and healing for the family. Terry felt deep appreciation for Duke, whose presence had luckily steered their lives towards contentment and rejuvenation. As weeks turned into months, progress continued to be seen in Timmy, an indication of the powerful impact the small terrier Duke had had on the family. When Dr. Harrison shared this positive update with Terry and his wife, they were overcome with joy. Their newborn, who was initially earmarked as having a very slim chance of thriving, was now starting to flex his knees. This newfound progress was undoubtedly linked to Duke's inclusion in their family, which seemed to inspire their son to exceed expectations. Dr. Harrison highlighted that the boy's keenness to interact and play with Duke was undoubtedly fueling his movements, which in turn was strengthening his muscles and spine. Although walking was a future goal that seemed a bit far off, the doctor had hope that Timmy, now lovingly nicknamed Timmy, would soon master crawling. This achievement happened even faster than predicted. At 18 months old, an unanticipated video call from his wife interrupted Terry's workday, initially causing him worry. However, the nervousness quickly transformed into jubilation as he saw his son Timmy. The boy who had previously found moving a struggle was now bustling about the floor in pursuit of Duke. In the video, Timmy was captured crawling after Duke, who was playfully holding a ball in his mouth. Even with Timmy's legs folding in awkward angles, his laughter filled the room. The sound is full of unadulterated delight. That same evening, the family treated themselves to a special celebratory cake. Brightly in contrast to the reserved and cautious atmosphere that defined their early days with Duke, their lives now appeared to be looking up. As Terry watched Timmy shuffling about the floor in a bid to keep up with Duke, he experienced a profound sense of contentment. During a tranquil Saturday morning, Terry found himself relaxing on his front porch with a book in his hand, his thoughts dwelling on his son Timmy's development. The youngster was proficient with crawling and was even able to delicately kick a ball. His memory of Timmy's second birthday made him grin, a memory specifically of the matching outfits sported by Timmy and their dog, Duke. At this point, Terry and his wife felt secure leaving Timmy and Duke in a room by themselves. Duke's protective nature was always at the ready. Amid the calming sounds of rustling foliage and tweeting birds, Duke's continuous barking broke the serene atmosphere, heralding an unexpected development that was about to unfold. Terry found himself nestled comfortably in the living room, absorbed by the book he was reading when he noticed Duke's rare, agitated behavior. The dog's ceaseless barking ruptured the tranquility of their household, providing a sharp contrast to the average day. Terry's wife was quickly concluding her shower, while their little boy, Timmy, was engrossed in playful pretend chat with his array of toy soldiers. All seemed in order, but Duke's actions suggested otherwise. Assuming Duke wanted to play, Terry set his book aside, picked up a ball, and flung it toward the living room in hopes of sparking a game of fetch. Contrary to his expectations, Duke paid no attention to the ball and kept barking with a distinct sense of urgency. At first, Terry found Duke's behavior amusing. However, his amusement ebbed away as the uninterrupted barking sparked worry over a possible, more urgent issue. Sensing something was off, Terry decided to trace the cause of Duke's anxiety by leading him directly to the origin of his discomfort. Duke dashed to the living room, where Terry was met with an unexpected sight. It was Timmy, the focus of Duke's incessant barking. Although diagnosed with a condition that was predicted to inhibit his ability to walk, Timmy was surprisingly standing on his own feet, completely engrossed in his play. Terry was so moved by this miraculous sight that he felt his knees buckle. He had to prop himself against the wall to keep from falling, staring in disbelief at something he had thought would always elude Timmy, who he'd been told would never be able to walk. The sight of him in motion was so poignant that tears began flowing down Terry's cheeks. Consumed by his emotions, Terry couldn't help but let out a choked cry, which immediately grabbed Timmy's attention. Timmy was seen by his father with a perplexed expression. "Dad, are you sorrowful?" he queried upon observing his father's tear-filled gaze from the threshold. Terry hastily wiped his eyes while he attempted to regain his composure. "Quite the contrary, Timmy. There's hardly been a moment when your dad has felt this joyous," he managed to say, sounding choked up. Timmy responded with a gentle chortle before returning his attention to his playthings. Regardless of this extraordinary occurrence, Terry managed to summon the resilience required to rush into the washroom and disclose the astonished news to his wife. Upon entering, he found her fresh out of a shower. Without affording her time to get dressed, he eagerly ushered her to the living area. As her gaze fell upon Timmy, who was still on his feet actively participating in his games, she was overcome by the wondrous sight and shed tears of joy. Observing his mother crying, Timmy moved his tiny feet on the ground to continue maintaining his balance and posed his question innocently. "Are you crying too, Mom?" She stifled her sobbing long enough to request, "Timmy, can you come over here, sweetheart?" Hesitant, he peered down at his legs, uncertain about their ability to traverse the full distance. In spite of the considerable gap between the two, a touching moment was witnessed when Duke, the lively terrier they had adopted a year before, sprung to Timmy's assistance. Racing towards the toddler, Duke stationed himself beside him, acting as a physical support. This allowed Timmy to place his tiny hand on the dog's furry back for needed stability. As Timmy took his first tentative steps towards his mother, she provided vocal encouragement, all while he tried to maintain his balance. Despite Timmy nearly tripping up twice over, Duke was close by, regulating his stride to match Timmy's careful steps. The pair slowly advanced across the room. When they eventually reached his mother's welcoming embrace, Duke also voiced his celebratory yelp, signifying the important breakthrough. Duke, the diminutive terrier that Terry had taken in unwittingly, managed to impart a significant life lesson to his son. Overwhelmed by a wave of emotions, Terry picked Duke up, drawing him into a tight hug of appreciation, cherishing his heroic furry aid. Duke's presence not only intensified the household's affection for him, but also induced Terry to contemplate his considerable influence on their lives. Not only had Duke lent encouragement for Timmy to defy his limitations, he had also managed to return joy to the mother's face, and much to their surprise, had managed to fortify their family bond. Regardless of his small size, it was clear that Duke had performed a Herculean task. Terry was eternally appreciative of his pet's courageous and loyal efforts. Here's where we end our narrative for the day. Have there been instances where pets have assisted their households to overcome health-related obstacles? Would you have entrusted yourself in the journey just as Terry did? Please feel free to leave your viewpoints and feedback below. We appreciate your attendance and invite you to join us another time for another noteworthy story.